My name is Hazel Williams, and at 32 years old, I thought I had finally made it. After years of hard work, I had a successful career as a financial analyst and a beautiful downtown apartment that I was proud to call my own. My younger sister Brooke, always our parents' favorite, despite her history of irresponsible behavior, knew exactly how comfortable my life had come. What I never expected was that she would wait until I was sound asleep to steal from me. Before I dive into the nightmare that unfolded that night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Click that subscribe button if you want more stories about family betrayal and how I turned the tables. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston where my parents, Eleanor and Thomas Williams, worked hard to provide for their two daughters. From an early age, it was clear that there were different standards in our house. Brooke, 3 years younger than me, could charm her way out of any situation with her big blue eyes and infectious laugh. When she broke a neighbor's window with a baseball at age 7, my parents called her it an accident and praised her athletic ability. When she failed math in 5th grade, they blamed the teacher for not recognizing her creative mind. I, on the other hand, was expected to be the responsible one. My report cards needed to be perfect. My room had to be spotless. Any mistake was met with disappointment rather than the understanding Brooke received. This double standard shaped both of us in profound ways. While Brooke learned she could get away with almost anything, I developed an intense self-reliance and financial responsibility that would define my adult life. By 16, I was working part-time at a local bookstore, saving every dollar I could for college. My parents made it clear that while they would help with tuition, I would need to contribute significantly. Brooke, meanwhile, spent her high school years bouncing between hobbies and friend groups, never developing the discipline that would later serve her in adult life. College was a turning point for me. While attending Boston University on a partial scholarship, I worked 20 hours a week at a campus coffee shop, maintained a 3.9 GPA, and secured competitive internships each summer. Those years were exhausting but formative. I learned to function on little sleep, to budget meticulously, and to never expect anyone else to solve my problems. After graduation, I faced the harsh reality of the job market during an economic downturn. Entry-level positions in finance were scarce, and I spent 9 months working as an administrative assistant at an insurance company while applying to countless financial firms. The rejection letters piled up, but I remained persistent. Finally, my break came in the form of a junior analyst position at Morton Financial. The salary was modest, but the opportunity was exactly what I needed. For 5 years, I worked my way up through the company. 12-hour days were standard. I volunteered for the projects no one else wanted. I built a reputation for thoroughness and reliability. When a senior analyst position opened up last year, I had earned the promotion. Through sheer determination and consistent excellence. With that promotion came a substantial salary increase, allowing me to finally purchase my dream apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. After years of roommates and cramped spaces, having a place that was truly mine felt like the ultimate achievement. My financial discipline had also resulted in substantial savings and an excellent credit score of 820 plus. That score had opened doors to premium credit cards and banking services that most people my age could only dream of. My most prized financial asset was my Black Excelsior card, with its generous limit and exclusive benefits. I rarely used it to its full potential, preferring to maintain my frugal habits. But I valued what it represented, financial security earned through years of perfect credit management. While I was building my career and financial foundation, Brooke was taking a very different path. After high school, she enrolled in 3 different college programs over 4 years, never completing any of them. Photography, marketing, and psychology all captured her interest temporarily, before she grew bored or found the coursework too demanding. Her employment history followed a similar pattern: retail jobs, restaurant work, office administration. She would start enthusiastically, then begin calling in sick or showing up late until her inevitable termination. Each job loss was never her fault, according to Brooke. The manager was unreasonable, the hours were unfair, or the work environment was toxic. There was always someone else to blame. Our parents reinforced this narrative by consistently bailing her out. Rent money when she came up short, a new car when hers was repossessed, co-signing for apartments despite her history of evictions. They called it supporting her while she found her path. I called it enabling irresponsibility. 6 months before the incident that changed everything, Brooke had been fired from her latest job at a marketing firm for chronic tardiness. The same week, her boyfriend Jake finally ended their 3-year relationship after discovering she had been lying about their shared finances. Rather than accepting responsibility, Brooke moved back home with our parents. Temporarily, and fell into a cycle of online shopping and nights out with friends, money for which seemed to materialize despite her unemployment. Sunday dinners at our parents' house had become increasingly tense affairs. While my mother would praise Brooke for the smallest accomplishments like applying for a job or making dinner once that week, my father would steer conversations away from anything that might highlight the growing divide between daughters' lives. When Brooke would mention a new purchase or trip she was planning, I would catch my father wincing slightly before quickly changing the subject. My attempts to establish boundaries were always viewed as coldness or lack of family loyalty. 3 weeks before the theft, I had refused to loan Brooke $2,000 for what she called business clothes for interviews. This refusal led to a heated argument at dinner, with my mother suggesting I had become selfish with my success, and my father quietly staring at his plate. "You have more than enough money, Hazel," my mother had said. "She is your sister. Family helps family." "I would help her in other ways," I replied. "Career advice, resume, review, interview, preparation. But not cash that would disappear with nothing to show for it." Brooke had stormed out, calling me heartless. My parents had given me that look, the one I had seen my entire life, the look that said, "Why can't you just give in? Why do you always have to make things difficult?" I left dinner early that night, driving back to my apartment with a familiar knot in my stomach, the same feeling I had carried throughout childhood, the sense that loving my sister meant enabling her, and refusing to do so made me the villain in our family story. What I did not realize then was that my refusal to provide that loan had set in motion a plan in my sister's mind. A plan that targeted the symbol of my financial success, my premium black Excelsior card with its $15,000 limit that I kept separate from my everyday cards, the card I had earned through years of perfect credit management, the card that represented everything Brooke had never worked for. The day before the theft was particularly stressful. I was finalizing a major presentation for a potential client that could bring millions in new business to our firm. The pressure was enormous, and my insomnia, which had plagued me since college, was worse than usual. I had been averaging 4 hours of sleep for the past week, relying heavily on coffee and sheer determination to function. At 7:30 that evening, just as I was reviewing my presentation for the 5th time, my phone rang. It was Brooke. Her voice uncharacteristically small and fragile. "Hazel, I hate to ask this, but I really need a place to stay tonight," she said. "Tiffany and I had a huge fight, and I can't go back to the apartment right now." Tiffany was Brooke's newest roommate, a girl she had met through mutual friends just 2 months earlier. They had moved in together after barely knowing each other, a decision I had advised against. "Can't you stay with Mom and Dad?" I asked. glancing at my laptop screen where dozens of financial projections awaited my review. "They are at that couples retreat in Vermont this weekend. Remember, Brooke?" said.
"Please, I promise I will be gone first thing in the morning. I just need one night."
I hesitated, knowing I needed a good night's sleep before my 9 a.m. presentation, but the alternative was my sister, potentially spending the night in her car or calling around to friends who might not have her best interests at heart. "Fine," I said, finally. "I will text you the address. Use the intercom when you arrive." I sent her my address, though I was sure she already knew it from housewarming, party I had thrown 3 months earlier. Despite my better judgment, I began tidying up the guest bathroom and pulling extra blankets from the closet for the couch. My apartment had 2 bedrooms, but the second was set up as my home office, completely unsuitable for overnight guests. Brooke arrived 45 minutes later with a suspiciously large overnight bag for someone planning to stay just one night. Her eyes were slightly red, but I couldn't tell if she had been crying or if it was allergies, as she claimed. She hugged me tightly at the door, thanking me profusely for coming through for her. We ate a simple dinner of pasta I had quickly prepared, while she shared fragmented details about her fight with Tiffany. Something about shared groceries and borrowed clothes that didn't quite add up. "Tickuli, I won't even know them, peace due to Tickuli," were the dramatic exits she described throughout the meal. I noticed her glancing around my apartment, taking in the concern's furnishings and decor with an expression I couldn't quite read. "So, when do you have to leave for work tomorrow?" she asked casually as I rinsed our plates. "I have a presentation at 9, I said. "I will probably head out around 7:30 to prepare at the office." "You seem stressed," she commented. "Are you sleeping okay?" The question surprised me. Brooke rarely showed interest in my well-being. "Not great," I admitted. "Do you take anything for it?" she pressed. "Sometimes," I said, not elaborating on the prescription sleep aid my doctor had recently prescribed for occasional use. As I set up the couch with sheets and blankets, Brooke kept asking unusual questions. How secure was the building? Did I know my neighbors well? Was my bedroom door hard to open if it swelled in humidity? Each question seemed innocent enough on its own, but together they formed a pattern I was too tired to recognize. Before retiring to my bedroom, I showed her where everything was. The bathroom glasses for water, the remote for the television. I placed my purse and wallet on my nightstand, as I always did, not thinking twice about this habit despite having a guest. My special black seltzer card was tucked into the inner pocket of my wallet, separated from my everyday cards. I swallowed my prescription sleep medication with a glass of water, set my alarm for 6 a.m., and collapsed into bed. The combination of a week of sleep deprivation and the medication worked quickly, pulling me into a sleeper sleep than usual. Normally, I was a light sleeper, waking at the smallest sounds. That night, however, I was completely unconscious, vulnerable in a way I rarely allowed myself to be. At exactly 2 a.m., according to the timestamps that would later become crucial evidence, Brooke crept down the hallway toward my bedroom. She paused outside the door, listening for any signs that I might be awake. Hearing nothing but my deep, medication-induced breathing, she slowly turned the handle and pushed the door open just enough to see me lying motionless in bed. With careful, calculated movements, she approached my nightstand. She stood watching me for nearly a full minute, making absolutely certain I was deeply asleep. Then, with delicate precision, she lifted my wallet from my purse. She took it to the bathroom, closing the door before turning on the light to minimize the risk of waking me. Inside my wallet, she found what she was looking for: my black Excelsior card. She removed it temporarily using her phone to photograph both sides, capturing all the details she would need: the 16-digit number, expiration date, and security code. She even took my driver's license out briefly to record my billing address. Details. With the information secured on her phone, she carefully replaced the card, exactly as she had found it. But she wasn't done. She needed one more thing. Returning to my bedside, with the wallet replaced exactly as it had been, she carefully took my phone from where it charged on the nightstand. She knew that large purchases would trigger security measures requiring verification through my phone. With practiced ease, she used my sleeping face to unlock the phone through facial recognition, then quickly disabled notifications that might alert me to any purchases. She forwarded the verification text to her own number before deleting the forwarding evidence and returning my phone to its charging position. As she was completing this last step, I stirred slightly, turning in my sleep. Brooke froze, her heart pounding, until I settled back into stillness. With a final glance to ensure everything appeared undisturbed, she slipped out. I special of my room and returned to the living room. For the next hour, as I slept obliviously, Brooke launched her spending spree. Using her laptop and the photos of my card, she first booked 2 first-class tickets to Tokyo for herself and our cousin Olivia, departing that very morning at 11 a.m. The tickets alone cost $6,000. Next came a reservation at the exclusive Park Hyatt Tokyo for 7 nights at a total of $3,500. She followed with online shopping at luxury Japanese brands, pre-ordering items helpful to be collected upon their arrival, adding another $5,500 for the years. By 3:30 a.m., Brooke had charged exactly $15,000 to my card, the full available credit limit. She had timed everything perfectly, making the purchases in the middle of the night when I would be least likely to see any alerts, and planning a departure that would have her out of the country before I could fully respond. As dawn approached, Brooke packed her overnight bag and drafted a quick note on a piece of paper from my own kitchen notepad. Emergency at Tiffany's. Had to run. Thanks for letting me crash. Love you. XOB. She placed it on the coffee table where I would easily find it, then quietly let herself out of my apartment at 5:15 a.m., a full 45 minutes before my alarm was set to go off. She had already arranged for a rideshare to pick her up and take her directly to the airport, where Olivia would be waiting with their luggage already packed. For the adventure Brooke had promised her days earlier. My sister had executed a perfect crime, or so she thought. I jolted awake, not to my alarm, but to the persistent buzzing of my phone at 6:23 a.m. Through bleary eyes, I saw multiple text messages flooding my screen. The first one made my stomach drop. Excelsior card alert, purchase approved for $6,000 at International Airways. The next messages were equally alarming. Excelsior card alert, purchase approved for $3.50 at Park Hyatt Tokyo. Excelsior card alert, purchase approved for $2, 800,000 at Ginza Luxury Collections. Excelsior card alert, purchase approved for $1.70 at Tokyo Electronics Direct. Excelsior card alert, purchase approved for $1.000 at Sakura Designer Boutique. And finally, Excelsior card alert. You have reached 100% of your credit limit. $15,000 gone in the middle of the night while I slept. My hands shaking, I sat upright in bed, fully awake now despite the lingering effects of my sleep, medication. This had to be a mistake. I never made purchases like these. I had never even been to Japan. I immediately called the Excelsior customer service line, my voice cracking as I reported the apparent fraud. The representative was calm and professional, asking me to verify the suspicious transactions. No, I did not make any of these purchases, I insisted. I was asleep. My card is right here in my wallet. I reached for my purse, fumbling to find my wallet. The black Excelsior card was exactly where it should be, nestled in its special compartment. How was this possible? How could someone use my card when it was physically in my possession? As the representative placed me on hold to transfer me to the fraud department, I suddenly remembered Brooke.
I called out her name, but the apartment remained silent. I rushed to the living room to find the couch empty, the blankets neatly folded with her note placed conspicuously on top. Emergency at Tiffany's had to run. Thanks for letting me crash. Love you so, B. Something felt wrong. I called Brooke immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text. Please call me ASAP. Important. Back on the phone with the fraud department, I learned the devastating news. The purchases had been verified through my own phone. The system had sent verification codes that were correctly entered. Billing address used matched my records exactly because all security protocols had been properly followed. The representative explained it would take time to investigate whether this qualified as fraud. But I was with my phone all night, I protested. It was charging next to my bed. I glanced at my phone settings and noticed something odd. The notification settings for my banking apps had been changed. Text forwarding had been enabled and then disabled. A cold realization began to settle over me. With growing suspicion, I checked my wallet more carefully. Though nothing was missing, I could tell it had been handled. The cards were arranged slightly differently than my usual meticulous organization. My driver's license was in the wrong slot. As I scrambled to get ready for my presentation, now hopelessly behind schedule, I noticed other subtle signs of intrusion. My desk drawer was slightly ajar. The bathroom towel was hung differently than I would have left it. Someone had gone through my things while I slept. I called Brooke again and again, each time reaching her voicemail. I tried Tiffany, her roommate, who sounded confused when I mentioned their fight. What fight? She asked.
Brooke told me she was staying with your parents this week because they needed help with some house project. The lie confirmed my growing suspicion. With trembling fingers, I opened Instagram on my phone. The first post in my feed made my blood run cold. It was Brooke, posting a selfie from what was clearly an airport terminal. The caption read, "Surprise trip with my favorite cousin number Tokyo number first class." She was tagged with Olivia, our 23-year-old cousin who had always been Brooke's partner in impulsive adventures. The timestamp showed it had been posted just 30 minutes earlier. They were already at the airport, about to leave the country with my $15,000. In a panic, I called my parents. Despite it being early, my mother answered on the third ring, her voice groggy with sleep. "Mom, I think Brooke stole my credit card information," I blurted without preamble. "She's charged $15,000 and is about to board a flight to Tokyo with Olivia." There was a pause before my mother responded, her voice instantly defensive. "Hazel, what are you talking about? Brooke would never do something like that." "Mom, I have proof," I insisted, my voice rising. "She stayed at my apartment last night, and now there are charges on my heart for flights to Tokyo. She's literally posted on Instagram that she's at the airport with Olivia." "There must be some misunderstanding," my mother said firmly. "Maybe she used her own card and the bank made a mistake. You know how these financial institutions mix things up sometimes." I could hear my father in the background asking what was happening. My mother covered the phone in a tone that suggested I was being hysterical. When my father came on the line, his voice carried that familiar note of disappointment. "Hazel, this is a serious accusation," he said gravely. "Brooke has her issues, but she would never steal from family. Perhaps you should check your facts before throwing around allegations like this. Dad, I am literally looking at $15,000 in charges to my card and an Instagram post of Brooke and Olivia at the airport heading to Tokyo," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "What more facts do I need?" "Maybe you gave her permission and forgot he suggested. Or Maybe you mentioned your card details in front of her at some point. You have been working very hard lately. Perhaps you're not thinking clearly. I felt a familiar knot forming in my stomach. The same knot I had felt countless times throughout my childhood when my perception of reality clashed with my family's unwillingness to hold Brooke accountable. For a brief, disorienting moment, I actually wondered if I could be wrong. Had I somehow authorized these charges in a sleep-deprived haze? Had I given Brooke permission? I didn't remember. I shook the doubt away. The evidence was clear. The timing was precise. This was theft, plain and simple. I ended the call with my parents, promising to update them when I knew more. But their dismissal had shaken me. As I rushed to prepare for work now, definitely late for my crucial presentation, I felt the physical symptoms of anxiety overwhelming me. My chest tightened, my hands wouldn't stop shaking, a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. For the first time in my professional life, I called in sick for an important meeting. I simply couldn't function. The financial violation, combined with my family's instantaneous defense of Brooke, had left me reeling. As I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, watching the Instagram updates of my sister and cousin heading through airport security with first-class boarding passes, I felt a profound sense of betrayal that went far beyond the stolen money. This wasn't just about $15,000. This was about a lifetime of different standards and expectations. This was about a family system that had always protected Brooke at my expense. This was about the realization that no matter what evidence I presented, my family would always choose to believe Brooke's version of reality over mine. In that moment of clarity, something shifted inside me. If my family wouldn't help me seek justice, I would have to do it myself. If they wouldn't believe me, I would gather evidence so compelling that they would have no choice but to face the truth. With newfound determination, I picked up my phone and made another call. Not to my family, but to the police. The local police station was busier than I expected for a weekday morning. I sat in a hard plastic chair, clutching a folder containing my credit card. Statements, screenshots of Brooke's, Instagram posts, and the note she had left in my apartment. After nearly an hour of waiting, I was finally called in to speak with Officer Garcia, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a matter-of-fact demeanor. "This happens more often than you'd think," she said after I explained the situation. "Family fraud cases are actually quite common." She took my statement methodically, asking clarifying questions about the America timeline and how Brooke might have accessed my card information. When I mentioned that my family was already dismissing my claims without evidence, Officer Garcia nodded knowingly. "Unfortunately, that's also common," she said. "Families often close ranks even when the evidence is clear. It's hard for people to accept that someone they love could commit a crime, especially against another family member." She explained because the card was still in my possession and the information had been used rather than the physical card, this would be classified as identity theft rather than credit card theft. She also warned me that prosecution would be complicated by the family relationship. "You can absolutely press charges," she assured me, "but you should be prepared for family pressure to drop them. I see it in almost every case like this." After filing the police report, I headed directly to my bank. The fraud department representative I met with in person was significantly less optimistic than Officer Garcia. Because the security verification processes had been correctly followed using my own phone, the bank considered the charges provisionally authorized. They would investigate, but it could take up to 90 days to determine whether I qualified for fraud protection. In the meantime, I would be responsible for at least the minimum payment on the $15,000 balance. With my rent due in 2 weeks and several other bills pending, this unexpected financial strain was going to be significant, even with my healthy savings. The knowledge that Brooke was currently flying first class to Tokyo while I
scrambled to manage the financial fallout of her theft filled me with a cold fury I had never experienced before.
But beneath the anger was a deeper pain. The realization that my sister had so little regard for me that she could steal such a significant amount without hesitation or remorse. Throughout the day, evidence of Brooke's spending spree continued to appear on social media. An Instagram story showed her and Olivia toasting with champagne in their first-class cabin. Within hours of landing, they were posting photos from the park, high at Tokyo, showcasing the spectacular views from their luxury room. By evening, there were images of shopping bags from high-end Japanese brands, exactly matching the charges on credit card. The most infuriating post came from Olivia. Best surprise ever from the world's most generous cousin number, blessed number, Tokyo shopping spree. The photo showed Brooke and Olivia surrounded by shopping bags from luxury stores, both wearing new designer sunglasses that still had price tags visible in Japanese yen, equivalent to hundreds of dollars. I saved every post, every story, every piece of digital evidence, linking them to the fraudulent purchases. I was building a case that no one, not even my enabling parents, could deny. Speaking of my parents, they called that evening, their tone markedly different from our morning conversation. They had spoken with Brooke, who had apparently offered them an alternate explanation for her contest, my mother said, her voice hopeful, and that Olivia's parents gave them spending money as a graduation gift. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. Mom, do you honestly believe that? When has Brooke ever won anything, let alone first-class tickets to Japan worth thousands of dollars? It's more believable than her stealing your credit card, my father interjected. You need to drop this. You're going to damage your relationship with your sister over what might be a bank error. A bank error, I repeated incredulously. Dad, she literally posted photos of herself buying the exact items that were charged to my card. How can you still defend her? We're not defending anyone, my mother said, though her tone contradicted her words. We're just saying you should wait until Brooke comes home to discuss this calmly instead of making accusations and involving the police. When I told them I had already filed a police report, the conversation deteriorated rapidly. My father accused me of trying to ruin Brooke's life over a misunderstanding. My mother began crying, saying she had failed as a parent if her daughters could treat each other this way. Neither seemed concerned about the fact that I had been robbed of $15,000 or that their younger daughter was the perpetrator. After ending the call, I received a barrage of text messages from extended family members. Word had spread quickly. Aunt Susan suggested I was jealous of Brooke's free spirit and adventure. Uncle Robert questioned whether I might have given permission while tired and forgotten. Cousin Taylor wondered if this was all an overreaction to Brooke borrowing my recard for an emergency. Only Uncle William, my father's brother and the financial pragmatist of the family, reached out with genuine concern. Have you spoken with a lawyer? He texted. This is serious and you should protect yourself, regardless of family feelings. His message was the only one that acknowledged the reality of what had happened, and I felt a surge of gratitude amidst my growing isolation. The psychological toll of the situation began to manifest physically. My already problematic insomnia worsened to the point that I managed only 2 or 3 hours of broken sleep each night. I found myself questioning my own birth when my family so easily dismissed my experience. Memories from childhood resurfaced the time Brooke had broken my science fair project, and my parents had told me to be understanding because she was younger. The Christmas she had opened my presents because she couldn't wait for her turn and was praised for her enthusiasm. The countless times her transgressions were minimized, while my achievements were expected. My friend Stephanie became my lifeline during this period. She came over after work most evenings, bringing dinner and a sympathetic ear. Unlike my family, she never questioned the reality of what had happened.
Of course she took your card, Stephanie said firmly.
The evidence is literally on her Instagram. Your family is in denial because facing the truth would mean acknowledging they failed somewhere along the way. Stephanie's clear-eyed perspective helped me maintain my own sanity as the actual gaslighting from my family intensified. With her encouragement, I continued methodically gathering evidence. I documented the timeline of events, secured copies of the transaction records, and compiled screenshots of all social media posts connecting Brooke and Olivia to the stolen funds. I also reached out to my law school friend Derek, who specialized in financial crimes. He reviewed my evidence and confirmed what I already suspected: I had a strong case for criminal charges against my sister. "But are you prepared for what that means for your family?" he asked, gently. "Once you go down this road, relationships changed permanently. Some never recover." I thought about his question for a long time. Was I ready to potentially fracture my family beyond repair? Was justice for this theft worth the possibility of permanent estrangement from my parents? Did I have it in me to send my own sister to court or possibly even jail? The answer came to me while watching yet another Instagram story of Brooke and Olivia enjoying an expensive sushi dinner, laughing without a care in the world. What hurt most wasn't the money, though. That was significant. It was the complete lack of remorse, the absolute absence of consideration for how her actions affected me, the brazen confidence that once again there would be no consequences for her behavior. This wasn't just about the $15,000. This was about breaking a lifelong pattern of enablement and denial. This was about finally establishing that my boundaries mattered, that my financial security was not a resource for Brooke to plunder whenever she wanted,
Something she hadn't earned.
I spent the week preparing for their return. According to the flight information I had found in my credit card transactions, Brooke and Olivia would be arriving back in Boston the following Sunday. I knew my parents would welcome them home, probably with celebration rather than confrontation. I had no doubt that Brooke had spun an elaborate story to explain their luxury. Vacation, one my parents were all too willing to believe. But this time would be different. This time, I had evidence no one could deny. This time, I was ready to break the cycle, regardless of the cost to our family dynamics. As Sunday approached, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. The stage was set for a family reckoning unlike anything we had experienced before. Sunday arrived with a sense of inevitable tension. I had learned through family text messages deliberately excluding me that my parents were hosting a welcome home dinner for Brooke and Olivia. The exclusion was telling. They knew a confrontation was coming and were attempting to control the narrative by keeping me away. I dressed carefully that evening, choosing a professional black dress and minimal jewelry. This wasn't a social call. It was a reckoning. I packed my evidence folder into my leather portfolio and drove the familiar route to my childhood home, my heart pounding with each mile. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed several cars already parked. Family members gathered to hear about the exciting Tokyo adventure. Perfect. An audience would make it harder for my parents to dismiss the evidence I was about to present. I rang the doorbell rather than using my key, positioning myself as a visitor rather than family.
My mother answered, her smile faltering when she saw me.
"Hazel, we weren't expecting you," she said, her tone making it clear this wasn't an oversight. "I wouldn't miss Brooke's homecoming," I replied evenly, stepping past her into the foyer. The dining room was filled with family Aunt Susan and her husband Uncle Robert and his wife, my grandparents, and several cousins, including Olivia's parents. At the center of attention was Brooke, animated and glowing as she distributed small gifts from Japan. Olivia sat beside her occasionally, adding details to Brooke's dramatic retelling of their adventures. Everyone fell silent when I entered. Brooke froze mid-sentence, a Japanese fan clutched in her hand. For a fraction of a second, genuine fear flashed across her face before she composed herself into a bright smile. "Hazel," she exclaimed with forced enthusiasm, "I didn't know you were coming. Look what I brought you." She reached for a small package on the table, but I remained standing in the doorway, portfolio clutched in my hand. "How was Tokyo?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. $15,000 worth of luxury must have been quite the experience. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. My father stood from his chair at the head of the table. "Hazel, if you've come to his tone, carrying a warning." "Actually, Dad, I think the family should hear this," I replied. "Since most of them already know about my ridiculous accusation, they should also hear the evidence." Brooke left nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "We won this trip in an online contest. Tell her, Olivia." Olivia nodded too quickly, her eyes darting around the room. "Yeah, Brooke entered this travel contest thing, and they picked her entry. Super lucky." My mother stepped forward, placing herself slightly between me and Brooke in an instinctively protective gesture. "Let's all calm down," she suggested. "Brooke and Olivia just got back from a long flight. They're tired. This isn't the time for whatever misunderstanding you're still upset about, Hazel." "Misunderstanding," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling theft and fraud now?" Brooke stood up, her expression transforming into one of wounded innocence. Her eyes began to glisten with tears that could be summoned at will, a talent she had perfected since childhood. "I don't know why you're doing this," she said tremulously. "I'm really hurt that you'd accuse me of something so awful. I would never steal from you. You're my sister." Several family members murmured sympathetically, giving me disapproving glances. Aunt Susan put her arm around Brooke supportively. Uncle Robert shook his head as if disappointed in my behavior. My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "That's enough, Hazel. I won't have you coming into our home and attacking your sister with these baseless accusations. If you're having financial problems, we can discuss that privately, but don't blame Brooke for your issues." "Baseless?" I echoed, unable to believe what I was hearing despite having expected exactly this response. "The police and the bank don't seem to think they're baseless, Dad." Brooke began to cry in earnest, now burying her face in our mother's shoulder, the perfect victim. "Stop pretending, Hazel," my father said, his voice hard with finality. "She would never touch your money. This isn't the first time you've made up stories for attention." My mother looked at me with a mixture of pity and concern. "Maybe you should talk to someone professional," she suggested quietly. "These delusions aren't healthy." I stood frozen, the full weight of my isolation crashing down on me. Here I was the victim of a serious crime committed by my own sister, being treated as though I was mentally unstable for naming the truth. The injustice of it was breathtaking. In that moment, memories cascaded through my mind with painful clarity. Brooke breaking my treasured music box at age 6, and my parents telling me to share better. Brooke borrowing my new sweater in high school and returning it stained with my Sembe years ago mother, suggesting I shouldn't have clothes too nice to be ruined. Brooke copying my college essay, and my father praising her creativity rather than addressing the plagiarism.
A lifetime of being gaslit about my own reality. A lifetime of adjusting my expectations to accommodate Brooke's behavior. A lifetime of being told that my boundaries were the problem, not her violations of them. Something crystallized inside me in that moment, an absolute clarity about the pattern we've been locked in for decades and my role in maintaining it. By continuing to doubt myself, by seeking validation from people committed to denying reality, I had been complicit in my own diminishment. No more. I felt a strange calm settle over me, replacing the anxiety and anger that had driven me for the past week. I looked around the room, taking in the faces of my relatives, their discomfort, their judgment, their unwillingness to consider that the family narrative might be built on lies. None of it could touch me anymore, I smiled. The unexpected expression caught everyone off guard, including Brooke, whose tears paused momentarily in confusion. "You're right, Dad," I said softly. "Brooke would never touch my money." My father looked relieved at my apparent capitulation, already turning back toward his seat at the table. Because the card she used, I continued opening my portfolio and removing the first document. Wasn't actually my primary Excelsior card. All eyes returned to me, confusion evident on every face. "It was my backup card," I explained, my voice gaining strength. "The one I keep specifically for monitoring potential fraud. The one with special security features I had installed after noticing small, unexplained charges on my account 3 months ago after Brooke visited for my housewarming party." The silence in the dining room was absolute. Even Brooke had stopped her foreman, her tear-streaked face frozen in a look of growing alarm. I laid out the first document on the dining table. A detailed transaction record from the card company. This special monitored card sends email notifications with IP addresses for every purchase. I explained my tone professional, as if presenting to clients. The first-class tickets to Tokyo, purchased at 2:47 a.m. from IP address 172-1634, 91 my apartment building, specifically my Wi-Fi network. I placed a second document beside the first. Here are the screenshots of the Instagram posts with timestamps matching exactly when the purchases were made. Notice the caption on this one, posted at 6:15 a.m. from the airport surprise trip with my favorite cousin, number Tokyo, number first class. Brooke began to speak, but I continued methodically placing a third document on the growing pile. "This is the hotel confirmation email," I said. "Interesting how it was sent to brookewilliams93@gmail.com, isn't it?" And here I added a fourth sheet. "Are the store receipts forwarded from the credit card company complete with a signature that looks remarkably like yours?" Brooke, the handwriting analyst the police consulted, thought so too. My father's face had drained of color. My mother was clutching the back of a dining chair for support. Around the table, relatives shifted uncomfortably, the narrative they had accepted beginning to crumble under the weight of evidence. But I wasn't finished. I saved the most damning proof for last. From my portfolio, I removed a small flash drive and held it up. After discovering the unauthorized transactions, I contacted my building manager, I said. "Our lobby and hallways have security cameras. Would you like to see the footage from 2 a.m. last Sunday?" Brooke's composure completely collapsed. She looked wildly around the room like a trapped animal seeking escape. "She said I could use it." She blurted suddenly. "Hazel told me I could use the card as a gift for helping her with a work project." All eyes turned to me, then back to Brooke, whose story was already evolving. "Well, she didn't say it directly," Brooke amended quickly. "But she implied it. She owes me anyway for all the times I helped her." Olivia, who had been silent throughout my presentation, suddenly spoke up, her voice small and frightened. "You told me she gave you permission to use it as a birthday gift," she said to Brooke. "You said it was already arranged between you two." Brooke shot Olivia a venomous look. "Shut up," she hissed.
but Olivia, perhaps seeing the direction things were headed, continued. You woke me up at 4 a.m. saying we had to pack for Tokyo because your sister had surprised you with tickets. I had no idea they were stolen. The word stolen hung in the air, impossible to ignore or reinterpret. My mother sank into a chair, her hand over her mouth. My father stood rigid, his worldview visibly crumbling as he processed the evidence before him. You went into her room while she was sleeping, he asked Brooke, his voice hollow with disbelief. Brooke, recognizing that her denials were futile, switched tactics with the adaptability that had served her throughout life. It was just borrowing, she insisted, tears flowing again. I was going to pay it back. Hazel has so much money she wouldn't even miss $15,000. Those words, the casual entitlement they revealed, seemed to finally pierce my father's protective illusions about his younger daughter. Olivia's parents stood abruptly. We had no idea, her mother said firmly. Olivia will return everything purchased with that money immediately. Aunt Susan removed her arm from around Brooke's shoulders, physical distance, following her shifting allegiance. Around the table, relatives who had been so quick to doubt me now avoided my eyes, shame evident in their postures. The doorbell rang, an unexpected interruption in the tense scene. My father moved automatically to answer it, returning moments later with Officer Garcia, the police officer who had taken my initial report. Miss Williams, she said, addressing me formally, I received your message about having additional evidence to add to your case. The presence of law enforcement made the situation undeniably real. This wasn't a family disagreement to be swept under the rug. This was a crime with legal consequences. Brooke, finally cornering that this was serious, launched into full panic mode. You can't do this to me, she cried, looking wildly between our parents. Tell her she can't do this. A criminal record will ruin my life. My father, his face aged a decade in the past 10 minutes, shook his head slowly. This is beyond us now, Brooke. These are the consequences of your actions. It was perhaps the first time in her 29 years that our father had acknowledged that Brooke must face the results of her choices. The shock of it seemed to stun her into momentary silence. My mother, however, made one last, desperate attempt to protect her favorite child. Hazel, please, she begged. She's your sister. We can work this out as a family. She can pay you back over time. I regarded my mother steadily. How would she pay me back, Mom? She hasn't held a job for more than 6 months in her entire adult life. Every time she faces a financial crisis, you and Dad bail her out. That stops now. I turned to Officer Garcia. I'd like to add these documents to my statement, I said, gathering the evidence from the table. And I want to formally press charges for identity theft and credit card fraud. Brooke lunged toward me, her face contorted with rage and fear. But my father caught her arm, restraining her gently but firmly. Don't make this worse, he said quietly. Officer Garcia took my sister aside, speaking to her in low, serious tones about the process ahead, while my mother wept silently at the table. The family dinner had transformed into a crime scene, the welcome home celebration into the beginning of legal proceedings that would change all our lives. As Officer Garcia finished taking Brooke's statement, my sister fixed me with a look of pure hatred. I hope you're happy now, she spat, ruining my life over money. Is that all I am to you? A dollar amount? I met her gaze calmly. This isn't about money, Brooke. This is about consequences. You've never had them and it's damaged you. Maybe this will finally help you grow up. In the days that followed, my parents scrambled to contain the damage. They offered to pay the entire amount immediately if I brought in family, friends who were lawyers to discuss alternatives to prosecution. They appealed to my sense of family loyalty, to my compassion, to my concern for Brooke's future. But I remained firm. This was a felony theft. The amount was significant. The violation of trust was profound, and most importantly, The pattern needed to be broken for everyone's sake, including Brooke's. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s, seemed to agree when the case finally reached her courtroom. She ordered full restitution of the $15,000, 2 years of probation, and 200 hours of community service for Brooke. The felony charge would remain on her record, a permanent reminder of the night she crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. As we left the courthouse, my father placed a hand on my shoulder. A gesture of support that came far too late, but that I accepted nonetheless. "I think we failed you both," he said quietly, "in very different ways." It was the closest he would come to an apology, but it was a start. The 6 months following Brooke's conviction were a period of profound change for our entire family. The immediate aftermath was painful and chaotic, with my parents still desperately trying to shield Brooke from the full impact of her actions. They offered to pay her restitution, which I refused. They tried to find loopholes in her probation requirements, which I opposed. They even suggested family therapy where I could work through my anger, as if my based emotions were the problem rather than Brooks's actions. I established firm boundaries for the first time in my life. I would not attend family gatherings where Brooks's behavior was excused or minimized. I would not participate in conversations that gaslit my experience. I would not pretend that what happened was a misunderstanding or a one-time mistake. These boundaries were met with resistance at first. My mother accused me of being unforgiving. My father suggested I was punishing the whole family for Brooks's mistake. Extended relatives urged me to move on for family peace. But I held firm, and slowly a new family dynamic began to emerge from the ashes of the old one. With the case concluded and her legal obligations clear, Brooke faced real consequences for perhaps the first time. The job opportunity she had been pursuing fell through when her background check revealed the fresh felony conviction. Our parents, finally recognizing the damage their enabling had caused, established their own boundaries. Brooke would need to find employment and support herself. They would not provide financial assistance beyond helping with her initial restitution payment, which she would repay them over time. For someone who had always been rescued, these new expectations were a harsh awakening. Brooke sight through familiar patterns, denial, blame, self-pity, but found that they no longer worked. Reality had finally caught up with her. Olivia, perhaps the least culpable player in the drama, made genuine efforts to make amends. She returned all the items purchased with my stolen card and wrote me a heartfelt letter of apology. I didn't know it was stolen money, but I should have questioned where it all came from. She wrote, "I'm sorry I was a part of hurting you. I'm trying to be more thoughtful about the choices I make and the people I trust." I accepted her apology and even met her for coffee occasionally. Her remorse seemed genuine, and I saw no reason to punish her permanently for Brooke's manipulation. My own healing process was complex and nonlinear. I started therapy to address not just the theft itself, but the lifetime of family dynamics that had led to it. Through weekly sessions with Dr. Marshall, I began to understand how I had internalized the belief that my needs and boundaries were less important than Brooke's feelings. I learned to recognize the subtle ways I had been trained to doubt my own perceptions when they conflicted with the family narrative. The support group for victims of family financial abuse that Dr. Marshall recommended was particularly helpful. Hearing other stories of betrayal by those who should have protected them helped me feel less alone. More importantly, witnessing those further along in their healing journey gave me hope that I could rebuild my sense of security and trust. My friendship with Stephanie deepened through this period. She had stood by me when others doubted, offering practical help and emotional support without judgment. We began a tradition of Sunday brunches, creating a new ritual to replace the sense of family dinners that had once filled that time slot.
Your boundaries aren't just for you, she told me during one of these brunches. They're actually a gift to Brooke, too, even if she can't see it yet. Real love sometimes means letting people face the natural consequences of their actions. Professionally, I channeled my experience into a new focus. After securing a full refund from my credit card company, I developed a financial literacy presentation from my firm's community outreach program with special emphasis on protecting oneself from identity theft, particularly from family members, a surprisingly common problem. 6 months after the court case, our family gathered for Thanksgiving. The invitation had come from my father directly with an unusual addendum. Brooke has something she wants to say to everyone, and especially to you. I arrived at my parents' house with guarded optimism. The atmosphere was markedly different from family gatherings of the past. There was a definitive quality to the conversation, as if everyone was carefully finding their way in this new reality where uncomfortable truths were acknowledged rather than buried. Brooke looked different, too. The flashy clothes and perfectly styled hair had been replaced by a simpler, more practical appearance. She had found work as an administrative assistant at a small accounting firm, a position well below her capabilities, but one of the few options available with her record. The humbling experience seemed to have initiated genuine change. After dinner, she asked for everyone's attention, her hands visibly trembling as she spoke. I want to thank everyone for being here, she began, but mostly, I want to apologize to all of you for the embarrassment and pain I caused our family, and especially to Hazel. She turned to face me directly, her eyes meeting mine, without the manipulation or self-pity that had been her trademark. What I did was inexcusable, she said. I stole from you. I violated your trust. I put my desires above your basic right to seem crazy for telling the truth. I'm deeply ashamed, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm working to become someone who would never do those things again. The sincerity in her voice was something I had rarely heard from my sister. This wasn't the performance of remorse she had perfected over years of minor transgressions. This was genuine accountability. I won't say that moment instantly healed our relationship. Trust once shattered, rebuild slowly, if at all. But it was a beginning, a small stone in the foundation of whatever new relationship might be possible between us. Our parents, too, were learning and growing. My mother had started attending Al-Anon meetings, recognizing that her enabling behavior had patterns similar to those in families dealing with addiction. My father had become more reflective, occasionally acknowledging the ways his parenting had contributed to our difficult dynamics. The holiday wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension and old habits that threatened to reassert themselves. But beneath the awkwardness was something new. Honesty. We were finally seeing each other clearly without the distorting lens of denial and favoritism that had defined our family for decades. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the strange journey that had begun with a theft of $15,000. The financial loss had been significant, but the transformation it catalyzed was worth far more. I had found my voice, established my boundaries, and learned that I could survive the disapproval of those whose love had always seemed conditional. Sometimes the most valuable things we gain come from the losses we never wanted to experience. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to say, "This is my reality. This is my truth. This is my worth. And I will not allow anyone to tell me otherwise." Have you ever had to stand up to family when no one else would believe you? How did you find the strength to hold your ground? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone
who might need to hear that their boundaries matter too. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who should have protected yours in the first place.